On August 20th, 1994, Ernie Irvan was leading the NASCAR championship. He was faster than everybody, more consistent than everybody, and then he hit the wall at Michigan Speedway at 170 miles per hour. The doctors gave him a 10% chance of survival, and his family was called to say goodbye. This is the story of what happened after that. To understand what Michigan meant, you have to understand who Ernie Irvan was before it. He wasn't a darling. He wasn't the guy the sport was built around. Irvan came up through the ranks the hard way. Aggressive, talented, and absolutely zero interest in making friends on the track. They called him Swervin' Irvan, not as a compliment. He had a reputation for wrecking people, for racing too hard, and for not knowing where the line was. Early in his career, that reputation followed him everywhere. But here's the thing about Ernie Irvan. He could flat out drive a race car. When he landed at Morgan McClure Motorsports and eventually Robert Yates Racing, that raw talent finally had the equipment to match it, and he became one of the most dangerous drivers in the sport. By 1994, he was in the middle of a championship battle that looked like it was his to lose. He had the car, he had the momentum, and he had everything. But then Michigan happened. Practice session on August 20th, Michigan Speedway. Ernie Irvan's tire fails at full speed, and the car goes straight into the wall with almost no warning and almost no chance to react. The impact is catastrophic. He's airlifted to University of Michigan Medical Center with a severe brain injury, a collapsed lung, and damage that doctors couldn't fully assess for hours. When they finally delivered a prognosis to his family, it was brutal. 10% chance of survival. And if he did survive, the doctors weren't optimistic about what survival would look like. His wife, Kim, stayed by his side. His teammates were in shock. Robert Yates Racing, the team that had built everything around Ernie Irvan, had to figure out how to keep going without the driver that was supposed to lead them to a championship. They called Kenny Irby. They kept racing because that's just what you do in racing. But nobody was really thinking about racing. They were thinking about whether Ernie Irvan was going to make it through the night. He made it through the night and into the next night and the next. The 10% the doctors gave him started looking different as the days passed. Irvan was fighting in a way that surprised even the medical staff. Slowly, painfully, he was showing signs that his brain was healing. The recovery was brutal. Months of rehabilitation. Learning basic functions again. The kind of work that has nothing to do with racing and everything to do with just being a functioning human being. And somewhere in the middle of all that, Ernie Irvan decided he was coming back. Not just surviving, coming back to race. Most people thought he was crazy. His doctors were cautious at best. The NASCAR world, a world that had seen what crashes looked like, wasn't exactly lining up to tell him it was a good idea. But Kim believed him, his team believed him, and Ernie Irvan believed in himself. 13 months after the crash was supposed to kill him, he was back in a race car. October of 1995, at North Wilkesboro Speedway, Ernie Irvan returned to NASCAR competition. The reception was something NASCAR rarely sees. The fans who watched him get carried off at that Michigan infield gave him a standing ovation. Competitors who had raced against him, some of whom he'd wrecked over the years, were genuinely moved to see him back on track. And then he went out and ran competitively, just like he had never left. 1996 was supposed to be his redemption season. Robert Yates Racing gave him everything he needed, and Irvan delivered, winning races, running at the front, and proving the crash hadn't taken what made him special behind the wheel. He won at Michigan, the same track that nearly killed him. If you're looking for a moment that defines Ernie Irvan, that's it, standing in victory lane at Michigan Motor Speedway 2 years after they airlifted him out of there. But there was something else happening alongside the comeback. Something that said as much about NASCAR as it did Irvan, his relationship with Rusty Wallace. Rusty Wallace and Ernie Irvan did not like each other, and that's putting it mildly. They had tangled on track multiple times. Wallace was one of the drivers who had the most frustration with Irvan's aggressive style in the early years. The animosity was real, and it was mutual. Then Michigan happened. Something shifted in Rusty Wallace after that crash. Whatever frustration he carried towards Irvan, it didn't survive watching a competitor nearly die doing the same thing that they both did every weekend. When Irvan came back, Wallace was one of the first to acknowledge what he had accomplished. The rivalry didn't disappear, but it changed. It became the kind of respect that only exists between people who understand exactly what the other one risks every time they strap in the car. That transformation from enemies to something closer to mutual respect is one of the most human stories NASCAR produced in that entire era. Ernie Irvan never won the championship, and that's part of this story that lingers. A second serious crash in 1999 effectively ended his career. His body had taken too much, the risks were too high, and he walked away from racing this time, and it was for good. When you look at the 1994 season, the year Michigan stole from him, it's hard to not wonder. He was leading that championship. He had the best car, and he had everything lined up. One tire failure changed the entire trajectory of NASCAR history. Dale Earnhardt won that championship, and Ernie Irvan spent the next 2 years just trying to get back to the sport that almost killed him. He got back, he won races, and he stood in victory lane at Michigan. He did things that had no business being possible, given what that crash did to him. But the championship, that one was supposed to be his, and that never came. Ernie Irvan deserved better from NASCAR history. Not sympathy, not pity, just recognition that what he survived and what he came back to accomplish was one of the most remarkable stories that this sport has ever produced. And most casual fans don't even know his name. If you like racing history like this, subscribe to my channel and like this video, please. Thanks.